You ever think you're living a normal life until one moment cracks it wide open like a dropped souvenir snow globe? That was me. 1 second, I was just a husband on a family vacation, sipping a watered-down pina colada while my kids had fun on the water slides. The next, I was watching my wife turn hydration breaks into private swim lessons with a lifeguard who had a six-pack that could grate cheese. But here's the kicker, it didn't stop with him. No, my wife wasn't just cheating with one man. And by the time I figured out just how deep the betrayal went, I realized this wasn't just a story about infidelity. It was about multiple affairs, a whole web of lies, and me, stuck in the middle, trying to figure out whether to explode, break down, or get the kind of revenge they write movies about. We had been married for 9 years. 9 years of date nights that turned into grocery store runs, of work schedules that never quite lined up, of knowing each other so well that conversations sometimes felt optional. But I thought we were fine. Not perfect, but fine. This resort trip was supposed to be a reset, me, my wife Lauren, and our 2 kids spending a week in paradise. Ocean views, bottomless margaritas, water slides for the kids. What could go wrong? Well, let me tell you, a lot. The first sign was small, almost stupid. Lauren started putting on lip gloss before we went to the pool. Not unusual, except that I hadn't seen her wear lip gloss in 3 years, and suddenly, she was applying it like she was auditioning for a cosmetics ad. Then there was the lifeguard, Jesse. Mid-20s, tan, a walking Instagram thirst trap. He and Lauren started talking, which didn't bother me at first. But then it wasn't just talking. It was inside jokes. Whispered conversations. Quick glances that lingered a little too long. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being paranoid. But paranoia has a way of turning into reality when you start paying attention. It was little things, the way she laughed too much at his jokes, the way she suddenly needed alone time right when Jesse was on duty. And then, the big one afternoon, I went back to our room early, expecting to find her napping. Instead, I found her phone buzzing on the nightstand. A message popped up from a contact saved as J. My stomach dropped as I read it. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for round 2. Meet me after sunset? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife had been caught cheating. I wasn't stupid. I knew this wasn't just a flirty vacation fling. Infidelity like this doesn't just happen overnight. It festers, it grows in the cracks of a marriage until it finally bursts through. And I had just found the proof. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because when I set out to confront Lauren, I discovered something that made my stomach turn even more. Jesse, the lifeguard, wasn't the only man she had been sneaking around with. I followed her that night, lurking in the shadows like some bad detective in a hotel bathrobe. She walked toward the private beach, looking around nervously. I expected Jesse to meet her. Instead, it was another man. A different man. Older, well-dressed, the kind of guy who didn't belong in a lifeguard chair but in a boardroom. My wife kissed him like she had kissed me on our wedding day, slow, passionate, like the rest of the world didn't exist. And right then, I knew this wasn't some mistake. It wasn't just cheating, it was a full-blown, calculated double life. So now, the question wasn't just why she was doing this. It was how far she had gone. And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? Because if she thought she could get away with this, she had another thing coming. This wasn't just about catching her in the act. This was about payback. And I was just getting started. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching my wife melt into another man's arms like I had never existed. The waves crashed softly behind them, the sound almost mocking me as if the ocean itself was in on the joke. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, my heart pounded so hard I swore it would give me away, but they were too lost in each other to notice. I had come here expecting to find her sneaking off with Jesse, the lifeguard, and instead, I found her tangled up with some businessman who looked like he just walked out of a high-end golf course. And the way she looked at him, it wasn't just lust. It wasn't some careless vacation fling. There was something deeper, something practiced, something that told me this wasn't the first time she had met him like this. I wanted to storm over, grab her by the wrist, demand an explanation, but my gut told me to wait. If I had only just uncovered the tip of this betrayal, I needed to dig deeper. And revenge, well, that was best served cold. The next morning, I acted normal. Or at least, I tried to. I sat across from her at breakfast, watching her sip her coffee like she hadn't just been caught cheating in the worst way possible. She smiled at me, reached across the table to touch my hand like she still loved me, and I had to swallow the bitterness that threatened to spill out. I wanted to see how far she would go with the lie. Would she make excuses today? Would she suddenly get a migraine and need to rest in the room while I took the kids to the pool? Sure enough, halfway through breakfast, she sighed dramatically, rubbing her temples like she was on the verge of collapse. "I think I need to take it easy today," she murmured, faking concern. "Can you take the kids for a while? Maybe go to the beach or something? I just need a little quiet." Quiet. Right. I nodded, playing the role of the doting husband, while inside, my mind raced. The second she slipped away to the room, I waited exactly 5 minutes before following. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, moving fast, fueled by a rage so sharp it felt like a blade against my ribs. I reached our floor just in time to see her door click shut. Not 2 seconds later, another door opened at the far end of the hall, room 714. And who stepped out, adjusting his tie and running a hand through his salt and pepper hair? The same man from the beach. He had been in there with her. Right under my nose. I barely made it to the stairwell before my legs gave out. I gripped the railing, breathing hard, trying to process just how deep this went. My wife wasn't just cheating with the lifeguard for a little vacation thrill. She had another man, one with money, power, and, judging by the way he walked out of that room with a satisfied smirk, someone who had been in her life long before this trip. And the worst part? She was smart about it. She knew how to cover her tracks. If I hadn't followed her last night, if I hadn't been paying attention, I would have gone home from this trip thinking everything was fine, clueless while she carried on her secret life behind my back. I had to be smart, too. Blowing up now would only give her time to twist things, to come up with excuses, to turn this around on me. No, I needed to gather proof. I needed to make sure that when I confronted her, she had nowhere to run. And more than that, I wanted to know exactly who this man was. So, I did what any man pushed past his breaking point would do. I started digging. I spent the next few hours at the pool with the kids, pretending to be relaxed while my mind raced through every possibility. I sent Lucy and Noah to the kids' club, knowing they'd be safe and entertained, and then I went straight to the front desk. With a little small talk and a well-placed 20 slipped across the counter, I got what I needed. The name attached to room 714? James Whitmore. It meant nothing to me at first, but thanks to the wonders of social media, I had his entire profile pulled up within minutes. CEO of a mid-sized finance company. Married. 2 kids. Lives in Boston. The picture on his company's website showed him smiling with his family, a wife standing beside him with that same trusting look I probably wore every day before this nightmare started. Infidelity didn't just run in my marriage, it ran in his, too. And that's when the idea hit me. If my wife was willing to play this game, I was about to show her what happened when you played against someone who wasn't as clueless as she thought. Because there's a moment when betrayal settles into your bones, when it stops being a shock and becomes something colder, heavier, something that sharpens you instead of breaking you. That's where I was now. My wife had been caught cheating not just with one man but 2, slipping between their arms while I played the dutiful husband and father. I had proof, I had names, and now I had a plan. Because if she thought she could humiliate me, that she could carry on this tangled mess of infidelity without consequence, she was dead wrong. I spent the next 24 hours watching. Not in a pathetic, heartbroken way, but in the way a hunter watches prey before the strike. Lauren continued playing the role of a devoted wife, sitting across from me at dinner, pretending to listen when the kids told stories about their day at the water park, sneaking glances at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. She was waiting for something, waiting for another chance to slip away. And sure enough, after we tucked the kids into bed, she let out a tired sigh, rubbing her temples like she had been holding up the weight of the world. "I think I'll take a walk," she murmured, forcing a smile. "Just need some air." I nodded, acting distracted, flipping through the resort's in-room menu like I was debating between ordering a sandwich or letting exhaustion take me out. But the second she left, I was on my feet. This time, I wasn't just following her. I was setting the trap. She didn't go far, just down the dimly lit path that led past the pool, heading toward the private lounge area where the resort kept its high-end cabanas for VIP guests. I stayed in the shadows, heart steady, breathing even. She pulled out her phone, sending a quick message, and within seconds, James appeared. He didn't even hesitate, just slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her in like this was routine. Like they had done this 1,000 times. My stomach twisted, but I swallowed the bitterness down. I gave them a few minutes, just enough time for their guard to drop, and then I stepped into the open, letting my presence hit them like a thunderclap. Beautiful night, huh? My voice was casual, almost amused, like I had just stumbled into something mildly interesting instead of the brutal truth of my wife's cheating. Lauren froze first, her entire body stiffening before she turned to face me, eyes wide, mouth opening and closing like she had just forgotten how to speak. James, on the other hand, had the decency to step back, his expression darkening, calculating. He was a businessman, he had been in tough spots before. But nothing prepared him for this. Frank, Lauren started, her voice trembling just enough to make me wonder if it was fear or guilt. What are you? Just enjoying the resort, I cut in smoothly, stepping closer. But I have to say, the entertainment has been unexpected. I turned my gaze to James, letting the weight of my stare settle on him. James Whitmore, right? CO, family man. Funny, your wife and kids looked real happy in those Christmas photos on your company's website. Wonder how happy they'd be to know where you are right now. His face drained of color, and for the first time, I saw a real panic flicker behind his eyes. Lauren turned to him sharply, realization dawning too late. You're married, she hissed, voice sharp with disbelief, as if she had any right to be outraged about someone else's betrayal. I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. Oh, this is rich. You really thought you were the only one keeping secrets, Lauren? That's the thing about cheating, there's always another layer. And now, the question is, how many people should find out about this? James took a step forward, lowering his voice like he was about to negotiate his way out of a business deal. Look, let's not make a scene, he said, hands raised. We're all adults here. We can work this out. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Work this out, I echoed. Like how you worked your way into my wife's bed while I was watching our kids? Or how she worked her way through this resort like a personal playground. I turned back to Lauren, my voice steady, unwavering. First, Jesse. Now, James. Tell me, Lauren, am I missing anyone else? Should I check the bartender's schedule next? She flinched, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. But there wasn't one. Not this time. And I wasn't done yet. Because catching her cheating wasn't enough. She needed to feel it. To live it. And I had the perfect way to make sure she did. Lauren stood there frozen, her mind scrambling for an escape, but there wasn't one. She had been caught cheating, not just with one man, but two, in different places, different moments, weaving lies between sunscreen applications and bedtime stories for our kids. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, her face shifting between guilt and the kind of cold calculation that only someone used to deception could manage. James looked just as trapped, his polished businessman demeanor cracking under the weight of what this revelation could cost him. But unlike Lauren, he had something to lose, his reputation, his family, his entire carefully constructed life. And that was where I saw the opportunity. Because if Lauren thought she could play me for a fool, she had no idea who she was really up against. I took a slow step forward, letting the moment stretch, savoring the panic in their eyes. Here's how this is going to go, I said, my voice calm, controlled. James, you're going to walk away. Right now. Because if you so much as breathe in my direction again, your wife will be getting a full report of your vacation activities, complete with timestamps and a few choice pictures I might have snapped earlier. His mouth pressed into a thin line, fists clenching at his sides, but he didn't argue. He was smart enough to know when he'd lost. Without another word, he turned and walked off into the night, disappearing down the path toward his room, no doubt already rehearsing the lies he'd feed his wife when he got home. That left Lauren. My wife. The mother of my children. The woman who had stood across from me 9 years ago and promised me a life built on love, trust, and loyalty. And now, Here we were, standing on the ruins of that promise, her infidelity laid bare between us like a crime scene neither of us could ignore. She swallowed hard, finally finding her voice. "Frank, I interrupted, shaking my head. "Don't insult me by pretending you have an excuse that justifies any of this." The anger I had been holding back for days rose to the surface, steady and sharp, cutting through whatever remnants of love I might have still held for her. "Was it fun?" I asked, my tone almost mocking. "Sneaking around, lying to my face while I watched the kids? Did you get some kind of thrill knowing you were playing me for a fool?" Her eyes flashed with something, anger, frustration, maybe even a hint of shame, but she didn't answer. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't just messed up. She had chosen this. Over and over again. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair, trying to ground myself. "You know what the worst part is, Lauren?" I said finally, my voice quieter now, but no less deadly. I wasn't even looking for revenge. I just wanted to know the truth. But now? I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Now, I think I want to watch you lose everything you took for granted." Her face paled, realization hitting her in full force. She knew what was coming. And she knew there was nothing she could do to stop it. Lauren's face had drained of color, her lips parting like she wanted to protest, to reach for some last-ditch excuse that might soften the wreckage she had created. But there was nothing left to say. I had caught her cheating, not once, but twice, with 2 different men, right under my nose while our children played in the pool. The weight of it all settled deep in my chest, but not in the way I expected. The heartbreak had burned out. The betrayal, while still fresh, didn't sting as sharply anymore. What took its place was something colder, something clearer. This wasn't a wound to heal from. This was a lesson. And she was about to learn hers the hard way. She took a slow step forward, her voice trembling. "Frank, please, we can talk about this," she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me, and for the first time, I saw something real in her eyes, fear. Not fear of losing me, no. If she had cared about that, she wouldn't have done any of this. No, this was the fear of consequence. The fear of losing the life she had so easily taken for granted. "You think there's anything left to talk about?" I asked, my voice steady. "Lauren, you made your choice. Over and over again. And now, I'm making mine." I pulled out my phone, opening up the folder where I had saved every piece of evidence I had collected over the past 2 days, photos, timestamps, even the messages she thought had disappeared. I turned the screen toward her, watching her eyes widen as she took it all in. "You didn't just cheat on me," I continued. "You disrespected everything we built, everything we were supposed to be. And the worst part? You weren't even careful. You didn't care who saw, who could find out. So now, I'm going to make sure everyone does." Her breath hitched, panic setting in. "Frank, no, please, think about the kids. Don't do this to them." I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. "The kids? You did this to them, Lauren. You're the one who decided their mother was the kind of woman who would sneak around while they played in the pool, while I took care of them, while I trusted you." I stepped back, pocketing my phone. "But don't worry, I am thinking about them. That's why I'm making sure this ends here. Cleanly. Legally. Permanently." She opened her mouth to argue, to beg, to manipulate her way out of this the way she had probably done so many times before. But I was already walking away, my mind made up. Tomorrow, I'd be filing for divorce. And she'd be getting exactly what she deserved. Because infidelity wasn't just about broken vows. It was about broken trust. And once trust is gone, there's nothing left to save. I walked away from Lauren that night, but the war wasn't over. No, I wasn't the kind of man to simply disappear into the shadows while she continued living her life like nothing happened. Infidelity wasn't just some mistake she could sweep under the rug. It was a deliberate betrayal, a calculated destruction of everything I thought we had built. And if she thought she could just cry, beg, and manipulate her way out of this, she was in for a reality check. I wasn't going to just file for divorce. I was going to make sure she felt the consequences of her choices in ways she never saw coming. The next morning, I woke up before the kids, my mind clearer than it had been in days. I had spent the night planning, making calls, setting things into motion. First, I went to the resort's front desk and requested an early checkout. No warning, no discussion. When Lauren woke up and found me packing the suitcases, her face twisted in shock. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice still hushed with the fear of waking the kids. "Leaving," I said simply, folding one of Lucy's dresses and tucking it into the suitcase. "Taking the kids home." Her face paled. "Frank, no, please, we need to talk about this." "You can't just—" "I can," I cut her off, zipping up the bag. "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." I stood up straight, meeting her eyes. "And don't worry, you'll be getting the divorce papers soon enough." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. I had seen what she was capable of. Lies rolled off her tongue as easily as breathing. I wasn't falling for them anymore. But before I could turn away, she grabbed my arm. "Frank, you can't just take the kids away from me," she hissed, her voice shaking. "They need their mother." I exhaled sharply, steadying myself. "You're right," I said, my voice calmer now. "They do. But not the version of you who sneaks around behind their father's back like it's a game." I pulled my arm free. "You want to fight me on custody? Go ahead. But when I show the court what I found, do you really think they're going to side with you?" Her expression twisted in something between rage and desperation, but she said nothing. Because she knew. I had everything I needed to destroy the life she had so carefully balanced between her two affairs. But the real masterpiece? That was yet to come. After getting the kids settled in the car, I took a detour before heading to the airport. There was one last thing to do. I stopped by the front desk and requested a private meeting with the resort manager. Lauren thought she had just been caught cheating. What she didn't realize was that I had uncovered something even bigger. You see, Jesse, the lifeguard she had been sneaking around with, wasn't just some random employee. He was already on thin ice with the resort for having inappropriate relationships with guests. He had a history of this. And James? The wealthy businessman whose marriage was just as much of a sham as my own. He was tied to a scandal that could send his entire company into a PR nightmare. So I did what any man in my position would do. I made sure everyone found out. By the time Lauren realized what had happened, it was too late. Jesse was fired within the hour. His charming little act couldn't save him this time. James, on the other hand, received an unexpected visit from his wife, who had been anonymously tipped off about his late-night activities. And Lauren? Well, she had no idea that a neatly compiled folder of her resort escapades had been sent directly to the lawyer she would be hearing from very soon. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. As I drove away from the resort with the kids in the back seat, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Lauren had played her games, made her choices, and now she was left with the wreckage. And me? I was finally free.